Hi there, and welcome to Our Weekly Craft, a source for ideas, inspiration, and fun for crafters. I'm Sarah White, Chief Maker at OurDailyCraft.com, and today I want to talk about having enough. So I have talked about decluttering craft supplies before. I looked it up yesterday, and I think it's episode 26, but you can find it if you want to go back to it. But I feel like in the corners of the craft community that I see on Instagram and elsewhere, that I'm starting to see another sort of popularity of resurgence of thinking about stash, why we have stash, why we hold on to stash, how to use stash. And maybe it's the economic times that we're in, like with everything being more expensive, people don't have extra money to spend on yarn or fabric or embroidery floss or whatever your craft is. I think yarn automatically because obviously I have a lot of yarn, but this applies to whatever supplies you might have a stash of. So I thought it was worth it to think about it from sort of another direction, which is what feels like enough to you and like how to manage a stash, I guess. So this is appropriate for me right now because I'm working on this Granny Stitch Afghan, which was supposed to be a lap blanket, but it's like really, it's a double lap blanket, I guess. I can fold it in half and have it on my lap just perfect. So the idea behind this was both to use stash, but that I really wanted a blanket for my office because I'm always cold, regardless of the number of sweaters, thickness of socks that I'm wearing. I'm always cold. My desk is right next to a big window, and I don't know, it's not like a bad window, but I feel cold all the time. So I wanted a blanket that's special for my office. I wanted it to be colorful. I wanted to use oddballs, leftovers of stuff. It ended up being sort of organically that because of the first couple of yarns that I used, that I made, like I did a foundation row instead of chains for the first. So I knew I wanted to do 2 rows of the first color. And then the second color, I just happened to have only enough to do 1 row. So then I started repeating 2 rows, 1 row of each color. This is a great way to use stash. Blankets are fantastic for stash busting if you have oddballs, and I have all the oddballs. But what got me thinking about this in particular was there's a meme that's been going around mostly all year, but I'm sure it's older than that. But I've seen it, repeatedly in recent months, and it can be in general or related to specific types of supplies, but that says that I believe that buying craft supplies and using craft supplies are 2 separate hobbies. And that is sort of a joke about stash and how we all accumulate stuff and don't use it. And, and it's just bringing awareness to the idea that that's not really that funny, right? Because it's sort of a waste to have all this stuff and not use it. It's a waste of money, it's a waste of space, it's a waste of your energy. Like, you're thinking about this stuff that you're not using, and like, even if you enjoy the accumulation part, at some point it becomes like, oh, this is too much, and I have all this stuff and I'm not using it, and what am I doing, and why do I keep it, and all of that. And I know that there's guilt related to spending money on things and not using them, but there's an economic concept that's important in this whole conversation, which is sunk costs, which means that once you've spent money on something, that money is gone, and it doesn't matter if you have a thing like a ball of yarn or a yard of fabric or a pack of paper to show for it. Like, the money is not coming back, you have spent it, it is gone. And so it almost doesn't matter what happens to the thing that you bought because it no longer has that value, because you can't, unless you like literally return it to the store, you're not getting back the money that you spent for it. So you have to kind of release that from your thinking when you're talking about stash and getting rid of stuff. If you are in a decluttering mode, you need to kind of release that guilt feeling, because you will still have spent the money on it regardless of if you use the thing or if you give it to someone else. And my feeling on that too is that if you're not going to use something, it's better for it to go to someone who would use it than for it to sit on your shelf for years where it's going to annoy you. You have like the energy and the weight of that on your mind and heart all the time, even if you don't feel it, like it's there. And it's such like a release to let those things go. It can be. I guess it's not for everyone, but I like that idea of letting these things go and giving them the freedom to find the person who's going to make something out of them, right? Because if you consider that every ball of yarn and every piece of fabric and every piece of paper and every thing of wax that you can make a candle out of has potential, like its purpose is to be made into something else. It's not supposed to sit there as a ball of yarn forever. It's supposed to be made into something. So if you're not the one who's going to do it, then you need to release it to somebody who will, right? When you can get that mindset, that's a great way to think about decluttering, is not like being burdened by the weight of the money you spent and the time you wasted and the storage that was, taken up in your home by these things you don't love. But think about it as releasing those things, releasing that creative energy out into the world. That can help if you're having trouble with like wanting to get rid of things. But I think another thing that helps is knowing your definition of enough. I love having stash. Like, it has been so great for me through the years to be able to just say, like last week, I want to crochet a pumpkin. Oh, here's some orange yarn. Like, I don't even use orange that much. I mean, despite the sweater I'm wearing, the Display of Oddballs, and includes orange. I don't use orange yarn that much, but I've got some in my stash. I'm running out of like the orange and yellow and stuff that I don't use that often because I haven't been buying stuff. But that's kind of a good feeling too, to be like, oh, I'm almost, to the point where I couldn't just go to the shelf and find any color of the rainbow that I want. And that feels like a good thing and not like a panic thing. But it has been good for me as a designer and just as a creative person to be able to be like, oh, I want to make this thing. Let's go see what yarn I have, and I can use what I have to make whatever it is, be it socks or, a pair of pants. If it was, I knit a pair of leggings. I was going to say sewing pants, but I haven't actually sewn pants, so that's not. But, if it's sewing a dress or, knitting a pair of socks or wanting to make a card for somebody or doing holiday decorations or whatever, it's been good to be able to just go into my office, studio, whatever you want to call it. And there's going to be a post about that soon, about what we call things. But I like being able to just come up here and look around and find something that will work. So that's really satisfying. So enough to me feels like that. It feels like I have what I need. I have stuff I like. I have stuff I can use for projects, but I know that also there's too much, that there are things that I don't like. There are things that I won't use. There are things that I can't imagine being in projects that I want to make at this point in my life, or there's like a yarn that I like, but I'm not sure there's enough of it to make something out of, and I don't know if I want to combine it with something else or just let it go and let somebody else make something out of it. Enough also has to do with space, right? So my ultimate goal here is for this. This is an antique secretary, so this part is a desk. This drawer doesn't really work. It's missing a knob. But there's storage down here and there's storage up here, and it goes up. There's like another 2 shelves that you can't see above that. But my ultimate goal is for basically all of my yarn to fit in there, and I'm nowhere near that. So I have, physical space that feeds into my enough. Maybe you have a closet where you keep your fabric, or you have a shelf for your scrapbook paper, or a cabinet for yarn, whatever it is, that should play into your feelings and your definition of what enough is too. I have a cedar chest, and that's where I keep my fabric, and I want all my fabric to fit in there, and I'm a lot closer on the fabric than I am on the yarn. But that helps, that physical space of being like, okay, this is the shelf for craft books, and I have too many of those right now too. But knowing that you have a space that you're, I almost said allowed, but that you're wanting to fill with those things can help, make those decisions easier too. If you think about, okay, would I buy this again? Am I willing to let it take the space in my space that it will take up until I can use it? And those are, some things you can think about as you are considering decluttering if you need to. It's also just great to go through, even if you're not necessarily decluttering in this stage, but just to see, like, to take everything down and see what you have, which is going to automatically make you go, there'll probably be a few balls or a few pieces of fabric or whatever where you're just like, why? I do have yarn in my house that I didn't pick out because, I used to write about knitting a lot, and I wrote books, and I had yarn companies send me yarn for various things. And so there are actually yarns in my house that I did not choose and would not choose to ever use in projects. I know that doesn't normally happen to people, but there's probably something where you're like, oh, I don't really like that color, or that yarn doesn't feel as nice as I would have liked, or I don't know any babies anymore, so I should get rid of my baby yarn, or whatever. Just by looking at what you have and trying to sort it, you'll probably automatically find some things that you're willing to part with. But it's fun just to look through and be like, oh, I forgot I had that. I really want to make something with that, and it can inspire you, which is good in both ways, because you're making something, but you're making something from stash. And that's what this whole thing is about, right? And I don't want anybody to feel guilt about their stash. Like, that's not what this is about. Like I said, I love having stash, but I feel like I'm not alone in the feeling that it's so easy for it to kind of get out of your control, or for you to keep things longer than you need to. Again, that, I have fabric that's like little kid designs, and my daughter's 13. Like, I'm not going to use the I love you, mommy, right, flannel fabric that I bought when she was 3 or whatever, because we're not in that stage of life anymore, and that's fine. But I need to, acknowledge that and not keep it in my house too, right? So I guess that's the challenge, which is not a week challenge. It's an ongoing life challenge. But as we head into the colder season in the Northern Hemisphere, is a good time. We talk about spring cleaning, but I like a good fall and winter cleaning. Like, again, I talked a few weeks ago about what do you need going into this new season. And I talked about it in physical ways, like I need a new sweater. I really want a pair of socks. I need a blanket for my office, right? But it can also be like, what do I need my space to be? What do I want to feel when I walk into my house on a cold day, when it's 5:30 and dark outside? What do I want to feel when I walk into my office? What do I want to feel when I look at my yarn stash? What do I need from my space in this time? And so I like, that has kind of motivated me to clean a little bit more in my office, which has also got me thinking about the stash, because that's sort of the next. My closet is nightmarish. And it's stacked with bags of fabric and yarn and, you know, bags full of knitting needles and crochet hooks and everything that's not organized. And so that's what's going to come. I have like one shelf left that I need to clear off in the room itself, and then it's the closet. And so I know that I've got to deal with this stuff. But it's kind of exciting too to be like, you know, clearing the space and clearing the energy. Like I feel that there is an energy to the stuff and to the space itself. And like if I want a season of more creativity, of more openness, of more warmth and comfort and all of that, that the space reflects that and the stuff reflects that too, right? So that's part of my getting ready for the hunkering down season, right? And maybe it could be for you too. Is like, how do I set my stuff up so that when I'm home, you know, on a cold, snowy weekend, and I just want to make something, that I can just go make something and I don't have to deal with, oh, where did I leave my fabric scissors, or where's my stash of zippers, or whatever, you know, that you know where things are, you know, you have what you like and you have what you need, and that you know where those things are. And like, doesn't that sound nice? I haven't had that in a long time, and I'm excited to maybe bring that into my life again. So I guess the challenge then is all of that, but is to define for yourself what is enough. What would make you feel comfortable? And so that's like, what is uncomfortable when it comes to stash is like, there's too much of it. It's not organized. There's stuff in there I don't like. There's stuff in there I know I won't use. You know, all of that plays into, you know, how can I display it so it's pretty if I have too much for the space that I want to put it in, so it doesn't look nice. Like if this were, you know, I could fit most of the yarn I own in there, but it would be like stuffed, and that's not attractive, and that doesn't feel comfortable. That's like, you know, when the whole thing's going to avalanche on your head when you're trying to get a ball of yarn. That's not what we're looking for either, right? So it's like an ease and a comfort level, and what fits in your space and what looks nice and feels nice and all of that. So I want you to consider that, like, what is enough? What does that look like? What does that feel like? What can you do to get closer to that feeling, that visual that you have in your mind of what enough looks like? And we can talk about using stash. Like I have started 4 or 5 times writing a book about stash busting, which is particular to yarn. But, you know, if that's a subject we'll probably get to some other day, because this is getting a little long. But, you know, we can talk about how you go about using this sweater. Is a great example because it's two threads held together, and I used a bunch of different reds, oranges, and yellows and made it kind of fade by changing one color at a time. And I love this sweater. It's one of my favorites. I am excited when fall comes so I can wear it. It's kind of my Halloween sweater, which I shouldn't have worn it today because this is Thursday before Halloween on Monday, but I can wear it again. It's fine. Nobody will know. You know, so there are things like that where you can combine oddballs and do stashy projects. Just dropped my hook, but that's fine. You know, that we can talk about how you actually use the things that you have. But I think the place to start is really just going through, defining your enough, and then trying to make what you have fit that concept. And, you know, hopefully it'll lead you to looking through your stash and finding some stuff that gets you excited to make something. And maybe this weekend you can work on something using something that you discovered in your stash that you'd forgotten about, that you're really excited about, that's really pretty and soft and lovely. And again, those things that you're going to need for getting through winter. You know, I really need to, this is not a beauty thing, but I really need also for my office like a rug to go under my desk. I had one that was crocheted out of yarn I made from an old sheet. And when the kittens were young, one of them likes to get on my desk. Well, they both like to get on my desk, but one of them likes to get on my desk and try to drink out of glasses. And she knocked a glass over and spilled water all in my battery backup and all over my rug. And I was kind of afraid to wash it because it was like, tattery from being ripped into yarn. So I just tossed it, and I like having a rug under there all the time, but especially in the winter because it's again another little layer of warmth. So that's a thing that maybe I can go through I'm doing this as well, but then I can go through my stash and find whether it's fabric to make into yarn or, acrylics that I wouldn't love for a different project, but might be okay for knitting or crocheting a rug that's going to be just a layer to keep my feet warm in the winter. So maybe there's something like that you know that you need or want. We got a skeleton for our front porch. I kind of want to make him like be knitting, and so I almost want to start like knitting a scarf just to have a project for the skeleton to be knitting. But whatever it is, so it doesn't have to be serious. It can be something silly. Maybe you want to knit a pumpkin or crochet a pumpkin this weekend, or make some holiday decor for a different holiday, but whatever. Maybe you can find something in your stash as you're considering these things that you want to work on, and that would be awesome too. And I would love to hear about if you haven't enough, if you know what that is, if you've already done that work. I would love to hear about it because I can use all the inspiration, even though I've literally written a book, an ebook, which I'll link, about decluttering craft supplies. I feel like it's a continual battle and that I need to do it all the time. So that's that. And I did say last week that I wanted to start talking about craft books in this I used to talk about what I was reading and what I was watching, and I don't know that anybody watches this far into the videos anyway, but I felt like I was getting repetitive because I was reading the same things and watching the same shows, and because I don't watch that much and I read kind of slowly, and I don't want to talk about everything that I'm reading. So I thought that it would be fun to, again, as I'm going through the craft books, to talk about some craft books that I've been reading and enjoying. And so this week I wanted to talk about Sewing in a Straight Line by Bret Baier. This is an old-ish, it's not old book, but it's from 2011. I had this one out because I was making my daughter's Halloween costume last weekend. She just decided on Friday last week what she wanted to be, and we had an event on Sunday, so I took less than 48 hours to make her Halloween costume. She is Tsukasa, which is a ghost in a Japanese anime who haunts a school. He wears like a kimono style robe, and then it has like this pleated apron skirt thing and this little hat, which we bought on Amazon. But I used this First Time's a Charm cardie, which is just like a rectangular cardigan. It's called First Time's a Charm in this because it was made with knit fabric, and it was the first project she says she made with knit fabric, but it's all just rectangles. And I used a woven black cotton fabric for hers, but I used the measurements basically from this project to as the basis for her robe, and it's full length instead of being short like this one. But this book is, it's meant to be for beginner sewers. It's a lot of garments, but there's other projects too, like here's a little paper bag waist skirt. There's like a ruched dress there. There's belts. There's this little, I've always wanted to make this little flowy top because I wear tops like that. And there's like a tote bag. It's just a lot of like good basics. There's like on the cover, there's this is a little pleated skirt. But all of the sewing is just straight lines. And there's home things. Here's a little quilt. There's curtains, pillows, a little cube, tote bags, little toys. I don't know how that must be the face must be glued on because you can't do that with straight lines. But you know, it's just lots of cute projects. There's gift ideas, there's clothes, there's home stuff, and it's good, basic, cute stuff if you're new to sewing, if you're getting back into sewing, if you've never made garments before and you're a little intimidated by it. Sewing in a Straight Line. Britt Barrett, I knew from being, she was on Knit and Crochet Now. She was the editor of Crochet Today for a while. She's really cool. So this is a good, simple book, like straightforward instructions. A lot of it is, there's no patterns, like pattern pages. So if there's a pattern, it's based on your measurements, which is nice because that sort of gives you a little extra level of confidence in sewing to be like, I can make stuff just based on my body measurements. I don't need a pattern necessarily. You know, that is nice. And it's all straight lines. So that, you know, gives you that, again, confidence of like, I can make a skirt or I can make a top even as a beginner because it's just straight lines, and sewing a straight line, you know, literally straight might be a little difficult, but the concept of sewing a straight line is pretty simple. And that's actually the only, I've made myself one of those cardigans that I use. It's like a bright orange floral fabric, and so I use it like as a beach cover. I don't wear it that often, but it's fun. It was fun to make, and it's super easy. And there are other things in there I should make. Now that I've got it off the shelf again, maybe I'll make some things out of there as well. But that's a great book if you've got a beginner sewist in your life, if you are a beginner sewist and you're interested in making garments or things for the home and you don't quite know how to get started. It's a good reference. It's got some, you know, basic information on how to sew in it as well. So that's one that I recommend, Sewing in a Straight Line by Britt Barrett. I'll link it in the show notes as well. So yeah, that's it. I'm thinking about enough, and hopefully I will have some time to get started on the scary closet and the stash this weekend. Hopefully I will be doing a lot of crochet. I kind of am ready to start my next, like the swatch for my next sweater. I have a knit one and a crocheted one that I'd like to get started on because winter, and so I might do some swatching this weekend. I hope that you have something exciting planned and that, you know, it feels nice and fall where you are if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, and that you can get outside and have some fun and do some good crafts. And I'd love to hear what you're working on and what you think about this concept of enough. And yeah, so I just hope that you have a great weekend and a great crafty week, and I will see you again soon.